expected. But the Swiss government says the long-awaited independent report on the affair does not prove that the Swiss National Bank knew the gold had been plundered from Holocaust victims. However, it does suggest Swiss bankers simply chose to look the other way. Nick Valentine reports.
It was the uncovering of long-lost archives in the United States last year which sparked this 230-page Swiss study. The independent panel of historians calculated that Hitler's central bank deposited almost 120 kilos of gold at the National Swiss Bank, 3 times as much as the American government estimated in its own report.
The sum that came from the German 4-year plan authorities, $71.8 million in total, which represents, in essence, the plundering of the victims of National Socialism in Germany, in Western Europe, and in Eastern Europe.
The ingots sold to Switzerland represented the melted down gold from watches, coins and jewellery taken from Jews and other victims of the Nazis. Many Jewish groups allege some of it came from the fillings in victims' teeth. Switzerland's central bank was the biggest buyer of Nazi gold, but it wasn't the only beneficiary. Other Swiss national and commercial banks also received flows of money from the loot.
The most significant flows occurred to the Swiss National Bank and to the Swiss commercial banks. $390 million to the Swiss National Bank, $56.3 million to the Swiss commercial banks, in addition to a number of German commercial institutions.
The chairman of the Independent Commission of Experts, Jean-François Bergier, said the American report had left too many questions unanswered, including what happened to the gold after the war. The report concedes that even after the full extent of Nazi atrocities were revealed, Swiss bank managers were still maintaining they thought all the gold came from Germany's pre-war reserves. They criticised Swiss officials for averting their eyes to the real truth. The SNB has already donated around £50 million to a humanitarian fund for victims of the Holocaust. Survivors and victims' relatives say that's not enough.
This was their money, it was their father's money. So why should they leave it for Switzerland? What right does Switzerland, the bankers, have to that?
But the Swiss government says the report provides no new facts to justify further reparations. Some critics of Switzerland's World War II role have called for a renegotiation of the 1946 Washington Accord, under which the Swiss paid the Western Allies around £20 million towards European reconstruction in return for dropping all claims related to the Nazi gold. Nick Valentine, ITN.
With the end of the Cold War, more and more of the secret state has become exposed to view, east and west. The Americans have opened up what would have been their post-Armageddon seat of government deep under the ground of West Virginia. The bunker reveals they were planning to keep the machinery of congressional democracy functioning even under nuclear attack. From America, Steve Phillips reports.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
The United States Capitol, to many a symbol of freedom and democracy. The House of Representatives and the Senate have met in this building for nearly 200 years, providing a sense of stability and continuity to the citizens of the United States. These days, it's realistic to think that the structure might stand forever. But 40 years ago, that was not the case. During the Cold War, American military planners feared that Washington would become the primary target should the Soviet Union launch a nuclear attack. How would the government continue to function if the capital city were completely obliterated? They proposed a grand-scale solution: construct a top-secret bomb shelter large enough to protect the entire United States Congress, a huge bunker where the government could move to, if necessary, hidden beneath a luxurious resort hotel. The Greenbrier has played host to elite guests for nearly a century. An elegant hotel 3 hours outside Washington, D.C., this West Virginia resort is famous for fine cuisine and European health spa treatments. But when the government started building the shelter in the late 1950s, a different sort of health treatment was anticipated.
You would walk around here going through the shower area, the decontamination area.
Construction began on the government relocation facility in 1958 and took 4 years to complete. For decades, it sat buried underneath a mountain of earth and concrete, sealed off by steel blast doors weighing as much as 28 tons. The facility was actually visible from many a guest's window, but still remained a secret until it was exposed by the Washington Post after the fall of the Soviet Union. For 20 years, Fritz Bugas managed the secret facility for the government. He says the shelter was kept in a constant state of readiness.
Had you walked in here 10 years ago, you'd have walked into a facility that was completely equipped with supplies, materials, the necessities for sustaining life for 1,000 people for 30 to 60 days.
But the shelter was intended to do more than just sustain the lives of congressmen and senators. It was actually designed to replace the Capitol building itself.
Off the clinic area, we open up into the meeting rooms, which in fact would become the House and the Senate chambers under an activated situation. This particular room is equipped with 450 seats, and of course around to the left here would be where the Senate chamber is.
In addition to chambers for the House and Senate, the bunker contained a surgical suite and sophisticated communications and security equipment. A briefing room was equipped for television and radio broadcasts. Although most members would sleep in barrack-like dorm rooms, the congressional leadership had somewhat larger accommodations. In fact, it was a small city hidden inside a working hotel. After the bunker was exposed, the government no longer had a compelling interest in maintaining it. After all, the Cold War was already won. But rather than become a white elephant, the once secret government relocation facility is now an attraction. Guided tours are available for $25.